Astrology. So in this Elements of Astrology class, we've already covered the qualities, the planets, and the signs. And so now we're putting it all together with looking at 4 quadrants of a birth chart, as well as the 12 houses. So the houses represent the areas of our lives where these planets are manifesting or playing out in our lives. And so whatever house your sun is in is going to be the area of your life where most of your life force energy revolves. And so the first quadrant, which is the bottom left quadrant in a chart, is all about self-development. It's about the self, time spent with the self-reflection. The second quadrant, which begins with the 4th house and includes the 4th, 5th, and 6th houses, which are on the bottom right, has everything to do with family, kids, children, and work. So the 4th house is about the home, the 5th house is about children and love, and the 6th house has to do with work. And so that second quadrant, as we will see when I go through the houses, has to do with developing awareness outside of the self with our immediate family and people we share our home with children and people at work. And then the third quadrant, which is the top right, has to do with developing awareness about others, about our relationships, partnerships in business or love, intimacy, and society. And so if you have a lot of planets in this third quadrant, a lot of your life will be related to time spent with others and partners. And then the 4th quadrant has to do with awareness about the world, humanity, and the public. And so if you have a lot going on in that 4th quadrant, that will mean that a lot of your life force energy will be going towards the public or humanity and the world. So let's start with the first house, which starts with the rising sign on the very left of the chart. So when we look at the chart again, the very center is the Earth, and the very outward circle, the outer ring, is, you'll see the constellations. This is the sign that if you looked directly east, it's the sign that you would see on the horizon. So if you start with this horizontal line in the chart, on the left represents the east. And then this outer ring moves clockwise. And the planets move counterclockwise. So the planets are moving counterclockwise, and this outer ring of the constellations is moving clockwise. And each sign will be on the eastern horizon for around 2 hours, and then it switches. And so there's 24 hours in the day, and so all of the constellations will have about 2 hours on that horizon every day. So the ascendant, or also called your rising sign, is that constellation that was on the horizon, on the eastern horizon at the time that you were born. And your first house has to do with I am consciousness. It's about your appearance, your outward personality, how other people see you, how you first kind of express yourself. And it is the kind of the lens through which the rest of your chart filters, right? Because it is the outward facing self. And so you may be very different deep down than your rising sign, but the rising sign is kind of how everything gets filtered outwards. And so the first house represents awareness of self. So if you have the sun in the first house, that means a lot of your life energy is going to be related to understanding yourself and self-development and your persona. And so people who have the sun in the first house can light up a room. They have this radiant sense of self, a radiant persona. And if you have, for example, Pluto in the first house, that would bring an intensity, a power. You're here to have a strong impact, and you feel things incredibly deeply. You radiate that soul power and that intensity, and you're going to have Pluto-like themes related to your self, your style, your appearance, your persona. If you have Saturn in the first house, that is somebody who has a lot of innate maturity and sense of responsibility, maybe more conservative in the way, or restricted in the way that you express yourself, because Saturn is kind of a restricting influence and it's about maturity and responsibility. If you have Mercury in the first house, you're very communicative. You're somebody who maybe has the gift of gab or is a writer, and you're very curious. If you have Venus in your first house, that brings that extra charm and diplomacy. And Mars in the first house brings that very physically active, kind of aggressive, assertive, a lot of physical vitality, and that Mars, like a bit of an edge or a aggressive, confrontational part of your persona. The second house has to do with a sense of self-worth, our values, our money and our possessions, our earned income. So the eighth house has to do with shared resources, but the second house has to do with things that you earn and build through your own energy. And so whereas the sixth house has to do with your work and the 10th house has to do with your career, the second house has to do with your earned income and your job. And so how are you bringing resources to it? It has to do with how you attract resources, what you do to make money, what you value the most. If you have a strong second house, if you have your sun or your moon or Mercury, Venus, Mars in your second house, that will bring an ability to have an innate sense of value. So moving to the third house. The third house has to do with our mental activity, our mind, our thinking, learning. It has to do with writing and communicating. And it has to do also with our siblings and our immediate neighborhood. The fourth house, and if you haven't noticed yet, you will see that these houses correlate with the signs. So the first house correlates with Aries, the second house correlates with Taurus, the third house correlates with Gemini, and the fourth house correlates with Cancer. The fourth house represents home, family, parents, traditions, roots, an inner sense of security. The fourth house is about nurturing, it's our inner world. It's the very base of our chart. So there's a sense of protection, a sense of stability and security. It's our foundations. It's our family traditions and our lineages, our ancestors. So if you have a strong fourth house, or if you have a transit or a planet transiting your fourth house, the home and the family will be the area of your life where that planet is impacting. And so whatever sign or whatever planets you have in that house, you'll think about how those themes are manifesting related to your foundation of your life, your home, your connection with your parents and your family lineage, and this theme of building roots and security for oneself. All right, so the fifth house has to do with personal creativity, expression. The fifth house rules fun and playfulness, romance. The fifth house is associated with the inner child and the heart and the products of your creative energy. So this can be, again, children or your artistic products. So people who have the sun in the fifth house, your life revolves around young people, romance, fun, and creativity in children and the inner child. The sixth house has to do with our daily life routines, our physical body, health, work, our work in the world, our service, has to do with self-improvement, and it's related to healthcare systems. It's related to the body and our routines. And so if you are having a transit to your sixth house that is going to be impacting or encouraging you to look at your health routines, your physical body, your daily rituals, your daily routines, your daily rhythms. And so this will be the people that you come across with in your daily life, during your daily routines, especially at work or whatever service you're offering to the world. But planets in this house are very oriented towards humble service. It's not about the self, it's about being of practical and pragmatic service. So associated again with Virgo themes. And the fifth house is associated with Leo themes. The seventh house has to do with partnership and awareness of the other. So planets in this house are very diplomatic. They're meant to be the peacekeepers, understanding how to maintain relationships, maintain balance and relationality. This is the house that has to do with marriage or long-term partnerships, whether they be long-term romantic partners or long-term friendships, long-term business partnerships, and again, associated with themes of Libra. So if you have a very strong seventh house, that means that you are very oriented towards relationships and very oriented towards the other and balancing with the other. So you may need help with balancing with that, the first house themes of understanding what you want and need, and not just always focusing on what other people want and need. But people with a strong seventh house are very diplomatic, very tactful, very good negotiators and peacekeepers. The eighth house has to do with sexuality, death, the hidden realm, the occult. It's themes of regeneration, sharing power, sharing resources, other people's money, taxes. And it's the house of transformation. It's associated with Scorpio, and it has to do with the realm of intimacy, this shared space, whether it be through partnership, sexuality, sharing money and resources, collaboration. And all of these things have to do with the realm of transformation. And so this house is related to, again, all things taboo, which are all things kind of behind the scenes that hold a lot of power. So people who have a strong eighth house have a really good sense of power. They oftentimes are kind of behind the scenes operators, but are very strategic. They may be very drawn to the occult, to the hidden realm, to spirituality, and kind of that space, the liminal spaces between life and death. So whether that's being a death doula or a birth doula, or spending a lot of time in big institutions, understanding power and strategy, being a deep researcher, doing those deep dives into the depths of the human psyche and the human spirit. The ninth house has to do with expanding our horizons. It's related to higher education and long distance travel. It's associated with Sagittarius themes. So it has to do with publishing, religion, ideology, belief systems, world travel, law, philosophy. And so if you have the sun in the ninth house, that you may be somebody who immigrates to another country or becomes a professor or is known as a philosopher, or is somebody who has very strong belief systems and is meant to teach other people about wisdom and helping people to expand their minds. The 10th house has to do with outer world achievement. It's associated with Capricorn. So it has to do with our career, our legacy. It's the house of public recognition, our vocation, our purpose, our sense of purpose. It has to do with maturity and responsibility, and it's oriented towards worldly success. So if you have the sun in the 10th house or Jupiter in the 10th house, is a very lucky placement. Kim Kardashian has a Jupiter right on her midheaven. The midheaven is that cusp between the 9th house and the 10th house that represents your public achievement and your legacy. So having Jupiter in the 10th house can bring a lot, can bring fame, it can bring wealth, it can bring worldly success. If your sun or your north node or any other major placements are in the 10th house, you may spend a lot of your life oriented around your career or your work in the world or generating your legacy. The 11th house has to do with groups, friend groups, organizations. It has to do with society, humanitarian concerns, Aquarian themes of networking, groups, organizations, and society. And the 12th house, last but not least, is the dream realm, the spiritual realm. This is the collective unconscious, and it has to do with kind of secret, behind the scenes. Well, no, we won't say that. It is a space of solitude. If you have a lot of planets in the 12th house or any planets in the 12th house, it represents this need for solitude. So associated with Pisces themes of transcendence. The 12th house is thought of as the house of karmic undoing or self-sabotage, because planets in the 12th house are really about digging deep into one's kind of unconscious karma, and can be very oriented towards that wanting to merge with spirit, which can lead to escapism. But it's really the part of our charts where we're meant to transcend, we're meant to retreat, we're meant to find solitude and to connect with our own unconscious realm, with our own spirituality. Thank you so much for watching. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow us on Patreon.